Hello, this is Sharon from Sharon's Place. Thanks for joining me today. This is the Prairie Homestead Cookbook by Jill Winger, and the recipe is on page 256. Alright, the recipe calls for a half a cup of the whole wheat flour in a jar, clean jar, and I'm making a mess as usual. And you put in a quarter cup of filtered water or non-chlorine water. I also have a thermometer handy. And the reason for the thermometer is so that you can tell how warm the area is where you store the starter. This is a sourdough starter made from whole wheat, and it's a good brand. You stir it well. It's going to be a little thick. Mix it well. Now, I cover it with a loose fitting lid. I don't screw this down on there tight. I cover it with that and put it in a warm place somewhere between 76 and 80 degrees. And tomorrow, in 24 hours, I will come back and check it, and if it's bubbling, then I will add some more flour to it. You do all-purpose flour to maintain it instead of the whole wheat. All right, you can see that in the recipe. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and comment. And if you got any questions, just let me know. This is the second day, the second step, for homemade sourdough starter made from scratch, according to the recipe by Jill Winger. I am checking for bubbles or any signs of activity, and as you can see by the inserted picture there with the 2 marks on the jar, there are bubbles, and also it has risen. So I marked the spot on the top where it had risen to. The bottom mark is the original mark where the starter came up to after I made it in step 1. After I do what I'm supposed to do today, I will take those marks off and make a new mark at the level, the highest level where the starter comes up to. Well, according to her recipe, I have seen bubbles, so therefore I am supposed to add a half a cup of all-purpose flour, not the whole wheat flour, and a fourth of a cup of filtered non-chlorinated water. I will do that today. Then I will stir it very well, mix it well, and stir it down and scrape the insides of the jar and replace a loose fitting lid on it and mark the spot where the starter comes up to and place it in a warm spot again along with the thermometer that I have. I have now added all of the flour and the water, and I'm stirring it. You have to stir it pretty well because the all-purpose flour is very sticky and very thick feeling, and it takes a while to get it all wet and incorporated with the water that you add. And this is going to be a very thick sourdough starter. Now I am scraping the sides down and trying to clean the jar up some on the inside. There was no need at this point in time to get a clean, fresh jar because it should not rise above the level of the jar, and the jar should be big enough and tall enough. This is a wide mouth pint jar. Well, I say that, but you never know what might happen. You can see here the consistency is very thick. And now my jar will be marked and the lid placed on it loosely. And I will put it up and come back and check it again in 24 hours to see what it looks like, to see if we have any action going on. Okay, I'll catch you in the next step. It's been 24 hours since I left this sourdough starter to rise, and as you can see, it rose. And look at the bubbles. Hope you can see that. It rose so high that it took this top off, or it lifted it up. This is the third day. On the third day, if it's bubbly and rising, and you can see it is, there was the second rise spot, discard half of it. Now you can either throw that away or put it in a container and use it for biscuits, waffles or pancakes, something like that, in a recipe. After you discard half of it, you add half a cup of plain flour, 1/4 of a cup of non-chlorinated water, stir it well, and this time I'm going to use a bigger jar because it nearly ran over the last time. It raised to the top and pushed that lid up, so it almost ran over. So that's what I'm going to do today. But I'm going to stop this and bring you down a little closer where you can actually see what I'm doing. After 2 days, on the third feeding, you're to discard half of this, and you put the other half in another jar, such as I'm going to do with this one. You put your 3/4 cup of flour in there, your 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water, mix it well, stir it up good, put it with the lid on it. Well, this lid is a loose lid. It lets air and flow back and forth, which is important to the development of the starter. And be sure and mark with the marker the level that it's at, and then put it in a nice warm place, let it rise. And you repeat that step until it's very bubbly and rises high. And that shows that it's a good strong starter, and you can use it to make your recipes with. I have a larger jar right here, and in this larger jar I can keep my discard in, and if I want to, I can feed that. So that's where my discard's going to go. And I've showed this before. This is the book by Jill Winger called The Prairie Homestead Cookbook, page 256. All right, let's get started. I had this in a bowl to keep it from running over. So if it did run over, the bowl would have caught it. So I'm going to estimate about half and put it in here. And that's going to be my starter. The rest I will discard. And you know the drill. The flour goes in. That's all-purpose flour. The water goes in. This time I'm going to use a spatula to stir it with.
Again, it's going to be a thick batter. You mix it well, incorporate air in it. Make sure there's no dry spots and that you've mixed up all the liquid. And basically, you cover it loosely, mark it with a marker, and I will mark it where the level is, and put it in a nice warm spot to rise. Catch you again in 24 hours. This is day 4 of making a sourdough starter. All right, as you can see from this mark and the bubbles that's in it, this did well last night over the 24-hour time period, but I will tell you that it rose about half as high as it did the last time. This is the discard jar, and it rose a lot higher. It rose to about right here. Now, the discard I fed last night. I fed this on camera, and I'm fixing to do it again. So remember, it's the Prairie Homestead Cookbook, page 256 by Jill Winger. I have to do the discard, and according to instructions, it's about half. So I stir it first. It has a slightly alcohol smell to it. I think that's what's called the hooch, but that's normal. I add the flour, the same. It's the all-purpose flour. Something I have noticed is, and this is the water, it's filtered water, and it's non-chlorinated. I have noticed that after the 24-hour time periods, what starts out as a very thick batter gets thinner. And again, it's thick. I stirred it down, stirred it well. And if I mixed it correctly, it should come up to the same mark that it did before. Place the lid on it loosely. Check the spot to see if it's still at about the same area, and it is. My mark is right here. Place it in a warm place. Let it set for 24 hours. We'll come back, check it again. I'm back for day 5 of the sourdough starter that we started from scratch. All right, as you can see, this is the discard jar, and it had risen up this far last night. And this is the starter jar, and look at it. The mark, it's risen up quite a ways last night, and it's still risen. So it's time to discard half of it. So I'm going to, as you can see, it's pretty bubbly. I'm going to stir it down. Discard half of it. And flour goes in, half a cup, 1/4 of a cup of water. Stir well. Again, stiff dough. We're still using the same larger jar that I had changed to. It's a wet canning jar is what it is, 1 liter in size. And it's back down to the level that it was before it rose. Okay, put the lid back on it, or with a loose covering. You can cover it with a towel and a rubber band. Put it back in a warm place, let it rise. That's all for day 5. This is Sharon from Sharon's Place. Thanks for joining me today. This is the 6th and the last installment of my Making a Sourdough Starter. I used Jill Winger's the Prairie Homestead Cookbook. The recipe was on page 256. I've showed it in all of my short videos, and I want to show you what the starter looks like and how bubbly it is and how it has risen, and it's ready to go in the refrigerator because it's been doing this for several days now. And I have a jar of discard that I've been putting the discard in, and I will try to make some bread out of this discard tomorrow, or waffles, pancakes, biscuits, something. But you can see it has risen and it's been really active. So both of them are active and ready for refrigeration, and that's what I plan on doing with the starter and using the discard for some recipes. Thanks for joining me. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.